Have you ever noticed how a tiny, seemingly insignificant detail can just lead to a completely different outcome? Think about an airplane taking off from LA. If it shifts its heading by just say 3.5 degrees, well, by the time it reaches the East Coast, that tiny shift means its nose is veered. Oh, it's 7.5 feet. It might end up heading for a whole different continent, almost. Just a really small adjustment, right? But it creates this incredibly meaningful change in where it ends up. And that's the core idea we're diving into today. How these tiny atomic actions, the smallest parts of a bigger system, how they can compound into really massive, extraordinary results. So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack a really fascinating framework for understanding and, well, for building habits. We're drawing from a book that gets into the science of continuous improvement. And our goal here is to explore how making these tiny changes can lead to, incredible achievements. And maybe just as importantly, we'll look at what often stops us, what prevents us from harnessing this power in our own lives.
Yeah, exactly. Our mission here is really to pull out the most important insights from these sources for you. We want to help you understand not just what habits are, but fundamentally why they work. And crucially, how you can leverage them for your own goals. We'll look at some surprising real world examples and some really practical strategies you can actually apply, like right away.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this foundational principle. There's a really powerful origin story from the author of the material we're looking at. On the final day of his sophomore year in high school, he was hit directly in the face with a baseball bat. And the impact was just brutal. Crushed nose, multiple skull fractures, 2 shattered eye sockets. His brain actually slammed into his skull, causing immediate swelling. He ended up in a coma. He even describes, opening his eyes and seeing people running over to help, but having zero memory of the impact itself. Now, baseball had been this huge part of his life since he was like 4 years old. He dreamed of playing professionally.
Yeah.
But his return, well, it wasn't exactly smooth sailing. He was the only junior cut from the varsity team, sent down to play JV, which he found, pretty humiliating. But despite this incredibly challenging start, just a few years later, when he graduated college, he was selected as the top male athlete at Denison University, named to the ESPN Academic All-America team. That's an honor for just 33 players across the whole country. And he was listed in the school record books in like 8 different categories. He then goes on to become this successful writer, an entrepreneur, known as an expert on habits. Millions visiting his website, nearly 500,000 email subscribers. I mean, what an amazing transformation, right?
It really is. And that personal story, it perfectly illustrates what he later championed, this concept of small habits helping you fulfill your potential. What he did, maybe without even realizing it at first, was embrace what's called the aggregation of marginal gains. This strategy was famously used by Dave Brailsford, the performance director for British cycling. Now, for almost a century, British riders were, well, frankly, they were pretty mediocre. They'd only won a single Olympic gold medal since 1908, never won the Tour de France in 110 years. Their performance was so underwhelming that, get this, a top bike manufacturer in Europe actually refused to sell them bikes. They worried it would hurt their brand. Brailsford's approach was kind of revolutionary. He committed to improving everything by just 1%. His theory was, look, if you break down every single thing that goes into riding a bike, everything from the bike seats, the massage gels they use for recovery, even how the mechanics watch their hands to stop riders getting sick, if you improved each tiny element by just that 1%, the cumulative effect would be the significant jump in overall performance. And within a decade, this meticulous focus, it completely transformed British cycling. They became dominant, multiple Olympic golds, Tour de France victories. It really does make you wonder, why didn't anyone think of this sooner?
Yeah.
You know,
And the numbers really drive it home, don't they?
Yeah.
I was really struck by how much that tiny 1% difference compounds over a year. If you can just manage to get 1% better each day for 1 year, you end up an astounding 37 times better by the end of that year. But flip that around. If you get just 1% worse each day for a year, you decline pretty much down to 0. It really shows how what starts as just a small win or maybe a minor setback, it compounds into something way more significant. So the real insight here isn't just the math, is it's more like a profound way to reframe failure. Every small setback, like that 1% decline, it's actually crucial feedback. It's not some final judgment on you. Success isn't about those huge, once-in-a-lifetime transformations. It really is the product of your daily habits.
that's precisely why your current trajectory matters so much more than your current results. Think about it. A millionaire who consistently spends more than they earn each month, well, they're on a bad trajectory, right? It won't end well if those habits don't change. But contrast that with someone who's maybe broke right now, but they're saving just a little bit every month. They're on a positive path towards financial freedom, even if it feels slow. Your outcomes are really just a lagging measure of your habits, your net worth. Lagging measure of financial habits, your weight. Lagging measure of eating habits, your knowledge. Lagging measure of learning habits. Essentially, you get what you repeatedly do, the direction you're heading today. That truly dictates where you'll end up tomorrow.
Okay, but why does it often feel like we're not moving forward, even when we are putting in the effort? It can be so frustrating. You know, that feeling of pushing and pushing and just seeing nothing change. This is where the idea of the plateau of latent potential comes in. It's a great concept. Imagine an ice cube on a table in a cold room. Let's say it's 25 degrees Celsius. The room slowly heats up 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31 degrees, and you see absolutely no change in the ice cube. Nothing. But then, bang, at 32 degrees Celsius, it starts to melt. All that previous work, all that heat that was building up, it finally pays off right at that threshold. And this valley of disappointment, well, that's often where people give up, right? Just before they actually break through.
It's so true. And the work you're putting in during that time, it isn't wasted. It's being stored. Just like the heat accumulating in that room, what often looks to the outside world like some overnight success is actually the result, the culmination of a long period of seemingly unrewarding work. Work done right there on that plateau of latent potential. It's kind of like the human version of geological pressure building up silently until suddenly there's this huge shift. The progress is happening. You can't see it yet.
Okay, this brings us to a really common misconception, actually, which is focusing only on goals. Most of us, we're taught to set big, audacious goals. It feels ambitious, empowering. So what's the catch? Why does the material we looked at suggest that focusing too much on the end goal might actually be, well, counterproductive?
That's a great question because it really does push back against a lot of conventional wisdom. There are basically three main problems with a goals-first approach. First off, winners and losers often have the exact same goals. Think about any big competition, right? Every team's goal is to win the championship. Only one does. The goal itself clearly doesn't separate them. What really matters is their system, the process that leads to those results. For a coach, the goal is the championship, sure, but the system. That's how they recruit, manage staff, run practice. For an entrepreneur, maybe the goal is $1 million business. The system is how they test ideas, hire people, run their marketing campaigns. A musician wants to learn a new piece, that's the goal. The system is how often they practice, how they break down the hard parts. It's the daily grind, not the distant dream. That's what sets them apart. Second big problem, achieving a goal is really only a momentary change. If your room is a mess and you set a goal to clean it, okay, you might clean it once. But if you don't change the underlying sloppy habits that cause the mess, well, you'll soon be looking at another pile of clutter, right? You end up just chasing the same outcome again and again because you never actually changed the system underneath it all. To improve for good, you've got to solve problems at the systems level. Fix the inputs, and the outputs tend to fix themselves. Otherwise, you're just endlessly putting out fires. And the third issue is that goals can really restrict your happiness. There's this implicit assumption, isn't there? Once I reach my goal, then I'll finally be happy. But that mentality means you're constantly just postponing satisfaction until the next milestone comes along. It creates this kind of either-or conflict in your head. Either you achieve the goal and you're a success, or you fail and you're a disappointment. It mentally boxes you into this really narrow version of happiness, which, let's face it, is rarely how life actually works. True, lasting happiness often comes from the process itself, not just the final outcome.
Right. So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
The antidote seems to be this systems-first mentality. When you fall in love with the process, rather than just fixating on the product, well, you don't have to wait for some big external achievement to give yourself permission to be happy. You can actually feel satisfied anytime your system is running. And a good system, it can be successful in lots of different ways, not just the one you maybe first imagined. It really is about finding joy in the journey.
Exactly. And to take that a bit deeper, think about the three levels of change. There's outcome, there's process, and then there's identity. The material we studied suggests the most effective way to change your habits isn't just focusing on what you want to achieve. It's focusing on who you wish to become. Think of every single action you take as a vote for the type of person you're building yourself into. It's a profound shift, isn't it? From letting external actions dictate your identity to letting your desired identity drive your actions. Wow, that is a powerful shift in perspective. Really powerful. So instead of saying, I want to be thin, you'd frame it as, I am a healthy eater, or I want to write a book, becomes, I am a writer. The more pride you have in a particular part of your identity, the more motivated you'll naturally be to maintain the habits that go along with it. Like, If you're proud of your biceps, you'll fight hard never to skip an upper body workout, right?
Yeah.
Once your pride gets tangled up in it, you'll fight tooth and nail to keep those habits going.
Yeah.
But does this mean we need to be constantly aware of these identity votes? Or does it eventually just become, unconscious?
Ultimately, true behavior change is identity change. That's the core idea. Habits matter, yes, because they get you better results. They definitely can. But maybe, more profoundly, they matter because they change your beliefs about yourself. As you consistently cast those votes for who you want to be, your identity subtly starts to shift. And then it becomes more overt. Over time, that conscious choice becomes this ingrained part of who you are. And that makes the associated habits feel, well, natural, effortless even.
Okay, let's dive into the actual neurological blueprint of habits then. How does this work in the brain? The material breaks down the process of building any habit into 4 simple fundamental steps. You've got the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward. This 4-step pattern is described as like the backbone of every single habit. Your brain runs through these steps in the same order every single time. It's almost like a hidden code our brains are constantly running.
It really is. Let's break down each step quickly. First, you have the cue. This is basically the trigger. It tells your brain to kick off a behavior. It's a bit of information that predicts a reward is coming. Historically, our ancestors were scanning for cues related to primary rewards: food, water, safety. Today, we're more attuned to cues predicting secondary rewards like money, praise, power, love, or just a sense of personal satisfaction. Your brain is constantly analyzing your environment, both internal and external, looking for these cues, always predicting what's next. Next up is the craving. This is the real motivational force behind the habit. Importantly, it's the desire for the reward, not the reward itself. What you actually crave isn't the habit, like you don't crave smoking a cigarette. You crave the feeling of relief it provides. It's the desire for the change in state it delivers, that feeling of wanting something. Without that craving, there's no reason to act. This is where the emotion comes in. Okay, the third step is the response. This is the actual habit you perform. It could be a thought, or it could be an action. Now, whether you actually respond depends on a couple of things. How motivated you are, obviously, but also how much friction is involved with the behavior. How easy or hard is it to do? And of course, it also depends on your ability. A habit can only happen if you're actually capable, physically or mentally, of doing it. And finally, the response delivers a reward. Rewards are the end goal of every habit. They do 2 really critical things. First, they satisfy your craving. They give you that moment of contentment or relief. And second, they teach your brain which actions are worth remembering and repeating in the future. This whole feedback loop is what strengthens the habit over time, making it more automatic.
And here's the kicker, right? This isn't something that happens just occasionally. The material describes it as this endless feedback loop. It's running and active every single moment you're alive. Your brain is just constantly scanning, predicting, trying out responses, learning from the results. It all happens in a split second, over and over and over again. It kind of makes you realize how much is going on just beneath the surface of our awareness, doesn't it?
It truly does. And that efficiency is exactly what makes habits so useful. Our conscious mind, it's a bottleneck, right? It can only focus on one problem at a time. Habits reduce that cognitive load. They free up mental space for more essential tasks. So we often perform actions totally unconsciously. But that same efficiency, well, it also makes habits dangerous. As they form, your actions can fall under the direction of your automatic non-conscious mind, which means you can easily fall back into old patterns before you even realize what's happening. It reminds me of what the psychologist Carl Jung said: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So the real challenge then is bringing awareness to these hidden drivers, these automatic patterns.
Okay, so let's get practical. How do we apply this understanding to our own lives? The first law of behavior change, according to the material, is make it obvious. So how do we actually become aware of our current habits, especially the ones that are kind of invisible, running on autopilot?
Yeah, a great place to start is something called the habit scorecard. It's really simple. You just list out your daily habits: wake up, check phone, brush teeth, make coffee, whatever. And then you rate each one. Is it good, plus, bad, or neutral? This act alone brings immediate awareness to behaviors you might not even realize you're doing consistently. You can literally see where your time and energy are flowing.
That reminds me of that fascinating system they use in the Japanese railway system. It's called pointing and calling. Have you heard of this? The train operators literally point at important signals or speedometers and call out the status aloud, like signal is green or speed is 80. This forces them to consciously engage multiple senses: eyes, hands, mouth, ears. It makes them much more likely to notice problems before things go wrong. And apparently, this system reduces errors by something like 85% and accidents by 30%, which is huge. You could actually apply this in daily life too, couldn't you? Like if you're trying to cut back on junk food and you notice yourself reaching for a cookie, you could literally say out loud, I'm about to eat this cookie, but I don't actually need it. Eating it will make me gain weight and hurt my health. Oh, Tim. Just hearing your bad habits spoken aloud like that, it makes the consequences feel a bit more real. It adds weight to the action, forces that moment of conscious choice.
And building on that awareness, implementation intentions are really key. This is all about being super specific about when and where you'll perform a new habit. The basic formula is, I will behavior at time and location. So not just I'll meditate more, but I will meditate for 1 minute at 7 a.m. in my kitchen. This removes all the ambiguity about when and where to act. It dramatically increases the odds you'll follow through. It's especially effective with fresh starts, like the beginning of the week or month. It takes the decision-making burden out of the moment itself.
And then there's habit stacking, which sounds really useful. It's about pairing a new habit with one you already do. The formula here is, after current habit, I will know the habit. That reminds me of the Diderot effect. You know how buying one new thing can sometimes spiral into this chain reaction of more purchases, like getting a new couch makes you want new lamps. Well, you can use that same chain reaction for good habits. So for example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will say one thing I'm grateful for. Or maybe, after I take off my work shoes, I will immediately change into my workout clothes. It's like finding the perfect launch pad for your new habit, piggybacking it onto something automatic.
You can also use environment design to make those good habits much more obvious. Think about how stores do this all the time. They use visual cues constantly to influence what you buy. Products at eye level, stuff on end caps. Apparently, 45% of Coca-Cola sales come just from those end-of-aisle racks. A great example from the material is Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. They put a small sticker that looked like a fly inside the men's urinals. And what happened? Well, men instinctively aimed for the fly. This apparently reduced spillage and cut cleaning costs by 8%, just by making the target obvious. So for you, this means things like putting your medication right next to the faucet so you remember to take it, leaving your guitar on a stand in the living room if you want to practice more, keeping nice stationery right on your desk if you want to write more thank you notes, or maybe filling up water bottles and placing them all around the house. You're basically building the cues right into your surroundings.
And the material also highlights the power of context, right? It says habits become associated not just with one single trigger, but with the whole environment surrounding the behavior. There's a fascinating study with insomniacs. Scientists told them to only get into bed when they actually felt tired. If they couldn't fall asleep, they had to get up and sit in another room until they felt sleepy again. And over time, what happened was they began to associate their bed only with the act of sleeping, not with tossing and turning or checking their phone. And this made it much easier for them to fall asleep quickly when they actually climbed in. That's such a powerful link between environment and behavior.
Exactly. And this power of context also reveals a really potent strategy. Habits can often be easier to change when you're in a new environment. Why? Because it helps you escape all those subtle triggers and cues in your usual surroundings that nudge you towards your current habits. Now, obviously, moving isn't always practical, so if a totally new environment isn't possible, then redefine or rearrange your current one. A helpful mantra here is one space, one use. The author talks about how getting a dedicated office space made it easier to switch off his work brain at the end of the day. It created a clear dividing line between work life and home life. Each room had one primary use. This helps prevent that mixing of contexts that often leads to the easier, maybe less desirable habits winning out. It's about creating clear mental boundaries.
Okay, moving on to the second law of behavior change.
Right.
Make it attractive. So beyond just making the cues obvious, what really motivates us? What makes us want to act and stick with something?
A lot of it comes down to dopamine, this neurotransmitter. It's released not just when we experience pleasure, but maybe even more powerfully when we anticipate a reward. Think about the anticipation of Christmas morning as a kid, or daydreaming about an upcoming vacation. Sometimes the anticipation feels even better than the actual event. Our brains actually have far more neural circuitry dedicated to wanting rewards than they do for actually liking them. It's that wanting, that craving, that really drives us to take action.
But if the anticipation is often stronger than the reward itself, does that make it harder to sustain habits long term? Once that initial wanting buzz wears off, how do we keep that dopamine hit going for habits that take time?
That's a critical point. And this insight leads directly into a strategy called temptation bundling. The material shares this great story about Ronan Byrne, an engineering student in Ireland. He loved watching Netflix, but he knew he really needed to exercise more. So what did he do? He literally hacked his stationary bike. He rigged it so it would only play Netflix if he was cycling at a certain minimum speed. If he slowed down too much, Netflix paused. He called it eliminating obesity one Netflix binge at a time. So you can use this formula. After habit I need, I will habit I want. Like after I clear my inbox need, I will check Instagram want. Or after I do 10 burpees need, I will check my fantasy football team want. It's about linking the thing you need to do directly with the thing you want to do, making the need habit more attractive. Another really powerful force here is the seductive pull of social norms. Humans are fundamentally herd animals, right? We want to belong, we want to bond with others, we want to earn the respect and approval of our peers. This deep-seated inclination is essential for survival, and it profoundly influences our habits. We tend to imitate the habits of three main groups. The close, our friends and family. The many, the tribe or culture. And the powerful, those with status and prestige. Think about how smoking often starts among friends, or how maybe wearing certain clothes or driving certain cars becomes normalized in a particular workplace or social circle. When a behavior you want to adopt is seen as normal within your culture or peer group, it becomes incredibly attractive. It's almost impossible to ignore that social gravity.
And this ties into the idea of reframing cravings too, doesn't it? The material talks about Alan Carr's famous book for quitting smoking. What it does so effectively is systematically reframe every single cue associated with smoking, giving it a totally new negative meaning. So instead of thinking smoking relieves my stress, you're taught to reframe it as smoking is actually destroying my nerves, making me more stressed. Instead of smoking is social, you learn I can be perfectly social without it, and non-smokers don't enjoy being around smoke. By the end of the book, the act of smoking seems, well, utterly undesirable, even foolish. So it's not just about what we see or anticipate, it's also about the story we tell ourselves about those things. That psychological reframe seems like a really powerful lever for shifting desire. Which brings us to maybe the most practical hurdle of all, just making the action itself easier to do. This is the third law of behavior change. Make it easy. Because the simple truth is, if there's a lot of friction involved, habits are just really hard to stick with.
Yeah, absolutely. This aligns perfectly with what scientists call the law of least effort. Humans, like water or electricity, naturally gravitate towards the option that requires the least amount of work. We're wired for efficiency. The material uses Jared Diamond's work as an example how the east-west axis of Eurasia made it much easier for agriculture to spread compared to the north-south axis of the Americas, where climate zones varied much more drastically. Easier path one. It's like a bent garden hose, right? If it's kinked, the water can't flow easily. Remove the bend, unkink it, and the water flows freely. The secret to getting more done often is to optimize your environment and your processes to remove those kinks, to reduce friction.
And we can reduce this friction through that environment design we talked about, but also through a strategy called addition by subtraction. There's an example of Japanese television manufacturers who totally redesigned their workspace to eliminate every single bit of wasted effort, walking, turning, bending. And by removing that friction, they added customers and revenue. Think about successful companies today. They are masters of removing friction. Meal delivery services remove the friction of grocery shopping and cooking. Dating apps remove the friction of awkward social introductions. Ride-sharing removes the friction of getting across town, even something like a voice-activated speaker. It just makes it slightly easier to say play country music than to pull out your phone, unlock it, open an app, search. It delivers the same result with less effort. Why is removing friction so incredibly powerful for shaping what we do?
Because fundamentally, our brains are wired for conservation of energy. If there's an easier path available, we're almost always going to take it. A really practical way to implement this is to prime your environment for future use. There's a story about Oswald Knuckles, an IT developer. He has this habit of resetting the room after he finishes an activity. Like, after watching TV, he puts the remote back, arranges the pillows neatly, not just to clean up, but to prepare the room for its next intended use, making it easier to start that next thing. My wife does something similar. She pre-sorts greeting cards into categories, which removes the friction when she actually wants to send one. So for you, the listener, this means things like setting out your breakfast items the night before, keeping your drawing tools right on your desk, laying out your workout clothes ahead of time, pre-chopping fruits and vegetables on the weekend so healthy meals are easier during the week. You're essentially building a smooth ramp towards your good habits instead of a steep staircase.
These small changes, they lead to what the material calls decisive moments. These are those tiny choices, often just a few seconds long, that pop up throughout your day and ultimately determine your trajectory.
Think about that moment you choose between starting to cook dinner or just ordering takeout, or the moment you decide between heading to the gym or collapsing on the couch, or maybe starting your homework versus grabbing the video game controller. These are like little forks in the road. And these small choices accumulating all day long, they really determine the path you end up taking. It truly brings home how our lives are just a sum of these tiny micro decisions.
And building on making things easy, when you're starting a completely new habit, you can apply the 2-minute rule. The rule is simple. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Now, this isn't just some gimmick. It works because it ritualizes the beginning of a larger routine. It lowers the barrier to entry so much that it's easy to just get started. And often, momentum takes over from there. So instead of read a book before bed, the goal becomes read 1 page. Instead of do 30 minutes of yoga, it's take out my yoga mat. Instead of study for class, it's open my notes. Instead of run 3 miles, it's put on my running shoes. The idea is to master the art of showing up. Some people even use it literally. I'll just do it for 2 minutes and then I can stop. One reader mentioned in the material actually lost over 100 pounds using this approach. Just by focusing on doing something for those first 2 minutes, it proves that just showing up, crossing that initial tiny threshold, is often more important than anything else.
All right, finally, we arrive at the 4th law of behavior change. Make it satisfying. And this one feels crucial because, let's face it, if a behavior isn't satisfying in some way, we're probably not going to stick with it for long.
That's exactly right. This brings us to the cardinal rule of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded gets repeated. What is immediately punished gets avoided. Our brains are just fundamentally wired this way. We prioritize immediate gratification over delayed rewards. It's a very deep-seated survival mechanism, and it's hard to override consciously.
This principle is illustrated so well by that story of Stephen Luby, the public health worker in Karachi, Pakistan. People there knew, generally, that hand washing was important for health, but consistency was really low. So Luby and his team partnered with Procter & Gamble, and they supplied the community with Safeguard soap. Now, unlike the standard plain soap bars they were used to, Safeguard was this premium soap. It foamed up really easily, it smelled great. Suddenly, the act of hand washing became, well, immediately pleasurable. It felt good. And the result? Significant improvements in children's health within just a few months. Diarrhea rates dropped by 52%, pneumonia by 48%. The problem wasn't knowledge, it was consistency. And making the habit feel good in the moment changed everything.
Yeah, it perfectly highlights this misaligned outcomes problem we often face. Good habits frequently have an immediate cost effort, maybe discomfort, delayed gratification. And the reward, better health, more wealth, whatever, is often far off in the future. Bad habits, on the other hand, tend to offer an immediate reward, pleasure, ease, stress relief. But their cost, illness, debt, regret are usually delayed. So the key then is to figure out how to bridge that gap. How can we add a little bit of immediate pleasure or satisfaction to our good habits? And maybe a little bit of immediate pain or friction to our bad ones. You're essentially trying to hack your brain's natural reward system to work for you, not against you.
That opens up some really creative possibilities, doesn't it? Like the idea of opening a special savings account for something you really want, say a leather jacket account or a trip to Europe fund. And then every time you skip a small indulgence, you're trying to cut back on like a fancy latte or eating out. You immediately transfer that money into the special account. That immediate reward of seeing the savings grow towards something desirable. It feels much better than just feeling deprived, right? It's important, though, to choose rewards that reinforce your desired identity. So maybe rewarding yourself with a relaxing massage after sticking to your workout plan, rather than, say, a huge tub of ice cream, because a massage aligns with the identity of someone who takes care of their body.
Habit tracking is another really powerful tool for making habits satisfying. Just the simple act of marking an X on a calendar each day you complete your desired habit. It does several things. 1, it creates a visual cue that reminds you to act. 2, it's inherently motivating because you get to see the streak you're building. You don't want to break the chain. And 3, it just feels satisfying to record your success. It provides this immediate visual proof that you are, in fact, casting those votes for the type of person you wish to become. That itself is a delightful form of immediate gratification.
Now, what about setbacks? Because, let's be real, nobody's perfect. We all miss a day sometimes. The material suggests a really simple but incredibly powerful rule here. Never miss twice. The real problem isn't usually slipping up once. It's the all-or-nothing thinking that often follows, like, oh, I missed my workout yesterday, guess the whole week is ruined, I'll start again Monday. Instead, the rule is, if you miss one day, just make sure you get right back on track the very next day, or even later the same day. Just showing up, Even if it's only for 5 minutes, even when you don't feel like it, it reaffirms your identity and prevents that one slip-up from completely unraveling the habit. It's all about resilience, not perfection.
And it's also really vital to make sure you're measuring the right thing. Take weight loss, for example. If the number on the scale isn't budging, even though you're doing all the right things, your motivation can totally tank. But if you shift your focus to tracking other signs of progress, what the material calls non-scale victories, things like your clothes fitting better, having more energy, your skin looking clearer, waking up earlier, focusing on those positive signals can maintain your motivation by showing you that progress is happening. Even if the primary measurement is being stubborn, it's about acknowledging all the different ways you're improving.
Okay, let's pivot a bit now. Let's talk about what it really takes to go from just having good habits to being truly great at something. How much does talent, our genes, actually matter in this long game of habit formation and mastery? It's a question a lot of people grapple with.
Yeah, it's a big one. The material we looked at confirms that, look, genes don't determine your destiny. Absolutely not. But they do seem to determine your areas of opportunity. Our genes predispose us towards certain personality traits, often described by psychologists using the Big Five. Openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And these genetic predispositions can make certain types of habits feel more naturally satisfying to you than others. The key then isn't to fight your nature, but to work with it, to direct your effort towards areas where your ambition aligns with your natural abilities. It's about playing the game where the odds are tilted, even slightly, in your favor.
This is where that idea of the explore-exploit trade-off comes in, right? When you're starting out in almost any new field or activity, there should be this initial period of exploration. Think about dating lots of different people before settling down, or taking a wide range of courses in college, like liberal arts, or businesses doing split testing on different marketing messages. The goal is to cast a wide net, try out many possibilities, figure out what genuinely excites you, what makes you feel authentic, what feels like you. And then once you've done that exploration, you shift your focus to exploit the best solution, the best fit you found. You double down on what works for you. It's like finding your unique superpower combo.
And here's a powerful strategy. If you can't seem to find a game where the odds already favor you, well then create one. How? By combining your unique set of skills. This drastically reduces the level of competition because the new game you've created is tailored to your specific strengths. The author gives his own example. In college, he designed his own major in biomechanics, combining physics, chemistry, biology, and anatomy. He felt he wasn't smart enough to truly stand out in any one of those hard sciences alone, so he created a new game, an intersection that perfectly suited his interests and abilities. So genes don't eliminate the need for hard work at all. They just help clarify what you should probably be working hard on. They give you a starting point, maybe a direction, but definitely not a fixed end point.
Okay, next up, there's this concept called the Goldilocks rule. This suggests that peak motivation happens when you're working on tasks that are just on the edge of your current abilities. Not too hard that you get discouraged, not too easy that you get bored, but just right. Manageably challenging. Steve Martin's comedy career is used as a great example here. Each year, he'd incrementally expand his stand-up routine. He'd add maybe just a minute or two of totally new material while keeping the jokes he knew already worked. This approach gave him just enough small victories, laughs from the new stuff, to keep him motivated, but also just enough mistakes, jokes bombing, to keep him working hard and refining. It's all about finding that optimal sweet spot between challenge and success.
But paradoxically, maybe the greatest threat to long-term success isn't actually failure, it's boredom. Think about it. Mastery requires consistent practice. But repetition, by its very nature, can become less interesting, less novel, less satisfying over time. The key insight here, according to the material, is that successful people, they feel the same lack of motivation, the same boredom as everyone else. The difference is they still find a way to show up, to put in the reps, despite those feelings of boredom. As the saying goes, professionals stick to the schedule, amateurs let life get in the way. You almost have to, as the material puts it, fall in love with boredom. It's often those least glamorous, repetitive parts of the journey that ultimately make the biggest difference.
And finally, let's touch on the importance of reflection and review. Because habits are necessary for mastery, sure, but they're not sufficient on their own. You can't just blindly repeat the same actions over and over and expect to become truly exceptional. Think of Pat Riley, the legendary coach of the LA Lakers back in the 80s. He had players meticulously track key stats and aim for just a 1% improvement in their overall championship effort, CBE score, each season. This provided continuous, targeted feedback for refinement. Or someone like comedian Chris Rock. He famously tests hundreds, maybe thousands of jokes in tiny comedy clubs before building his big specials. He's constantly reviewing, refining, cutting what doesn't work, finding those killer lines. It's about purposeful practice, isn't it? Not just mindless repetition.
Exactly right. It reiterates that improvement isn't just about forming habits, it's about constantly fine-tuning them. The material also brings up this interesting idea of identity flexibility. How do you redefine yourself so that the important aspects of your identity remain intact, even if your specific roles in life change? For instance, maybe someone whose identity was, "I'm a great soldier," has to transition after leaving the military. Their identity might transform into something like, "I'm the type of person who is disciplined, reliable, and great on a team." This allows your core identity to be flexible and resilient rather than brittle and dependent on one specific role. Your core values persist even as circumstances change.
So bringing it all back together, it seems crucial to remember that interplay between emotion and reason. Craving comes before the response. Feelings really do drive action. Even our logical reasons for taking action are ultimately fueled by some underlying emotion or desire. Desire initiates the process. Pleasure sustains it. Wanting and liking, these seem to be the two core drivers behind everything we do. If something isn't desirable, you have no reason to start doing it. If it isn't enjoyable or satisfying in some way, you probably have no reason to repeat it. It really is a powerful duo shaping our behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over, the material we've explored kind of offers this equation for satisfaction. Satisfaction, it quotes, liking wanting. Now, if your wants consistently outpace your likes, well, you're likely to always feel unsatisfied. You're perpetually putting more weight on the problem, what you lack, than on the solution, what you have or enjoy. So how can you apply this understanding in your own life? How might you cultivate contentment while still pursuing meaningful progress? Just think about it. What would happen if your daily likes, the things you appreciate and enjoy, started to consistently outweigh your wants, the things you feel you lack? How might that change your experience of life?